I'm going to try not to get too trolled by this fucking dipshit's fucking maneuver. Wait for controversy to arise, criticize Democratic position, encourage bipartisanship, announce support for Democratic position, vote for with Democrats. This better fucking happen.
Let's maul in the Central Committee. Let's cringe in the Central Committee. Let's bog in the Central Committee right now.
Joe Manchin speaks about the bill. Oh, for fuck's sake, I'm gonna mauled.
Good to have you here. So we know that you and a majority of the senators and Senator Capito, both of you worked on the traditional infrastructure bill, $1.2 trillion bill. That's passed the Senate pretty easily. It's over in the House. But we also know that House leaders say, well, but first, you got to pass this $3.5 trillion anti-poverty, healthcare, and climate plan. You voted to at least open debate and discussion on the bill to advance it in that sense. But as of today, if this bill exists as it does now, are you for it or against it?
Well, I've been very open about that, Hoppy. I do not believe that $3.5 trillion today is where we should be going based on what we have going on with inflation, what we have going on with the national debt, the indications we have, and the unknown of the COVID-19 or the Delta variants. Too much at stake right now to go in and make a commitment such as that and not have anything in the toolbox to take care of any challenges or crises we may have coming in. And right now we already put $5.4 trillion out. And with this $1.2 trillion that we've just voted for what we call hard infrastructure, truly roads and bridges, water, sewage, everything.
This is why splitting it into two bills was mind-bogglingly stupid and fucking dumb. Because these dipshits want to go, I voted for the bipartisanship, but then I voted against my liberal excess party people. Fuck those people. It makes absolutely no sense to allow them that political opportunity. I swear, he voted for the reconciliation bill. So I feel like this is the Joe Manchin cycle. Does anybody have that picture, the Joe Manchin cycle? I'm going to try not to get too trolled by this fucking dipshit's fucking maneuver. Wait for controversy to arise, criticize Democratic position, encourage bipartisanship, announce support for Democratic position, vote for with Democrats. This better fucking happen.
Broadband. That is such needed, so much needed all over the country. But the thing about it, Hoppy,
of course, America can't go broke.
Employment for the next 5 to 8 years, so you don't have a dip down to where there's nothing going on, or the economy would take a slump. You're going to have constant demand for high quality labor at high quality prices and pay and benefits, and that's something that's tremendous. But so right now it would be hard to say that we have that need, and why they're holding it hostage makes no sense to me whatsoever. I've always been a believer that every bill should be either voted up or down on its own merits and the need and the priorities that we have and the need for our nation.
Thank you, Triv Poppy, for the 521s.
Senator, are you alone among your fellow Democrats in raising concerns about that $3.5 trillion?
I don't think I'm alone. I will say that it's not crowded.
But there are a couple. You, Sinema, a few others.
There's a few. There's a few that have expressed reservations about it, and I can't speak for any of them. But I think anybody that looks at where we are today and the signs that we have of inflation could be our, and here's the thing that bothers me more than anything, Hop. Why is the federal government, why is the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve, still purchasing every month, Hoppy, $120 billion of our own debt?
Well, let's talk about that. You sent a letter to the Federal Reserve, to Jerome Powell, chairman of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve,
Correct.
expressing concern about what is called the quantitative easing that the
Correct.
Fed is purchasing, as you said, $120 billion a month in Treasury securities. That's our debt, and also mortgage-backed securities. What the Fed would say, I don't speak for the Fed, is they are trying to keep long-term interest rates down. But you think you think that they have carried that out too long, too far?
Well, Hoppy, you only use that basically when you're concerned about the economy taking a big dip or going into recession or trying to prevent a financial meltdown. That's when you use that. That's the tool in the toolbox. Why would you use it when you have growth? We have 9 million jobs that are unfulfilled. We have growth going on in the economy, and we see inflation rising.
Are you starting to hear? Are you starting to hear from constituents, or do you have concerns yourself about inflation? Inflation the last couple of months has been up.
I hear. Sure, I hear. I mean, if you go to the grocery store, I go to the grocery store. I shop the same as everybody. I see the prices. I go to the gas station and buy gas. I see the prices. I see an awful lot of things. I haven't done any remodeling or construction lately, but I've talked to a lot of my friends who are trying to add on, build, or remodel, and the price is almost doubled, tripled, and quadrupled.
That's not even true. The materials are like going down again. Home buyers aren't seeing savings from falling lumber prices. Here's why. Lumber prices hit a record high on May 7th at $1,670 per 1,000 board feet. And the price of lumber on the futures market has given up all of its gains for this year, falling by more than 50% in just the last few months. The spike was due to sudden soaring demand and low supply, both due to the pandemic. Sawmills closed at the start and did not ramp up production quickly enough to meet the new demand for builders and remodelers. Home builders and homeowners alike wanted more space, and that meant more lumber. Now demand for remodeling is falling as people spend more money on vacations instead. Home builders are still seeing strong demand, but they have slowed construction due to high costs. Sawmills have gotten back online, and many are having issues finding enough labor. Lower lumber prices are a welcome sign, but not a reality yet on the retail side. As the price declines begin grabbing headlines, the price of lumber packages quoted to builders held at record highs. In economics jargon, prices paid by builders or street prices were sticky. So in other words, this was a short-term thing that is now working its way through the system. You know, everything got shut down because of COVID-19, and they're just they're desperate for inflation so they can cut government spending.
As far as the raw materials. So yes, I'm concerned. I'm concerned across the board. And I think we should be concerned. Hoppy, here's the thing. You should be concerned, and I'm very much concerned. I just got the facts and figures on this. In almost not much more than a decade, within the last 10 years since I've been a United States Senator, the national debt has gone from around $10.5 trillion to $28.5 trillion in record time. Never before have we seen that. Never in the history of our country have we seen that type of debt accumulated in such a short period of time. Doesn't that concern anybody else? Why is nobody talking about it?
Well, I'll tell you why. Because, and it concerns me, it concerns you, I think it concerns others, because there has been no direct impact on the lives of individuals. If somebody woke up this morning and learned or heard that, my job is threatened or the prices are out of control or I can't get a loan and it's directly related to the national debt or taxes are going up because of national debt, then people would pay attention. But as long as there appear to be no consequences, Senator, nobody's going to.
The U.S. annual economy in 2010 was about $15 trillion. Now it is $21.5 trillion. The economy grew tremendously at that period, so we had the ability to have more debt. And I'll tell you something, chat. Just having debt doesn't matter. This is baby brain shit.
Going to pay close attention. I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm just saying I think that's the reality.
Nah, you're probably right. And basically, if it's not your ox, not your.
You're right. Right.
You're not getting gored.
Well,
your ox getting gored.
That actually brings Senator Joe Manchin's with us. That actually brings us back to this $3.5 trillion anti-poverty, healthcare, and climate plan. I want to mention a couple things in this.
National debt.
Paid family leave, medical leave, subsidized child care, extension of an expanded child tax credit, universal pre-K for 3- and 4-year-olds, 2 years free tuition-free community college, green cards to millions of immigrants, expanded Affordable Care Act subsidies, Broaden Medicare benefits to cover dental, vision, and hearing. Reduction prescription drug costs. Allowing Medicare to negotiate prices, among other things. So that's just a few of the things, tax credits for clean energy investments. That's just a few of the things right off the top. Now, some of those things, maybe many of those things, people would really like.
See what happens with these conservatives? Not one of those things is unpopular, buddy. Not one of those things is going to be politically or economically bad. All of those things are good. And many other countries already have those things.
People like some of those things. So are you...
We call that the sugar. Everybody likes a little sugar every now and then.
But you don't want to give them that sugar?
Well, we've been $5.4 trillion. We're trying to keep. We came out of a recession. We were dipping down when this pandemic hit and the COVID-19, and we were in a health crisis.
Yes, it worked. It worked, and there were no negative side effects. It's almost like when somebody's starving, feeding them is good.
We start going into what we call a financial crisis, and we threw $2.3 trillion at it last March and April. We returned out of that quicker than any time in history. Within 5 months,
yes,
we were out of it.
Looks like the liberal spending, the Libby-Lib spending was a good idea after all. Whoops.
Session as we were going in, but we just kept throwing more and more on it. So you can say we overprescribed the patient. Now we're up to $5.4 trillion and willing to even do more. And the only thing
By the way, Chad, this is over 10 years. 3.5 trillion over 10 years. Give me a break, Joe. Come on.
Should you maybe take a pause? Should you take a deep breath?
No.
If this is needed. There's a lot of good stuff in there and a lot of things that people would like. I understand that. But the bottom line is someone's got to pay the piper sooner or later.
All right. That is the weakest political argument I've ever seen in my life.
That is more than $20
All right, let's respond to
trillion.
that. Let's respond to that
It's
with
a massive
facts.
number.
Bigger than the size of our economy.
In fact, it's the biggest debt in the world, but the U.S. government keeps spending more than it brings in.
Our rising debt levels poses a national security threat.
People need to start taking this seriously or it'll be too late.
With the COVID pandemic, government spending has exploded, even as demands for more government programs are growing. But who...
By the way, chat, it doesn't need to be taken seriously, as this video will show you.
Who will end up paying for all this?
It's Washington, D.C.'s game of kicking the can, and your kids are going to be it.
Are future American
They've
generations
been saying this for 60 years.
really getting a broke country?
No.
Stephanie's here. Straighten everybody out.
Not all economists think the national debt is something we should worry about. One of them is Stephanie Kelton. She's a professor of economics and public policy at Stony Brook University.
I'm the former chief economist on the U.S. Senate Budget Committee for the Democratic staff, and I'm the author of a New York Times bestseller, The Deficit Myth.
That book has a lot of interesting ideas about government debt. We'll start with the fact that there's a big difference between you taking a loan and the government borrowing money. If you can't get money to pay your debts, your creditors can take your assets, and you could be in for a lifetime of misery. But the US government isn't you. It doesn't have to worry about where it can get the money to pay its debts because
The federal government's the issuer of the dollar, so it can never find itself in the same sort of financial trouble that you might find
Wait, you're
yourself
Baby
in when
Yoda?
it comes
I know,
to
right?
paying your debt back, because the government is paying back its debt with currency that it issues itself.
Listen to that again.
The government is paying back its debt with currency that it issues itself. In other words, the federal government doesn't have to worry about
You're gonna have to
earning
forgive
dollars
my very gringo pronunciations of your name for a while, because I'm stupid.
in order to repay its creditors.
Thank you for the
because
resub.
It gets to
Welcome.
manufacture the currency.
This is the key point. The US government can make more money whenever it wants to pay for whatever it wants to, including its debts. That means that not only can the US federal government never go broke, it doesn't need to borrow money from anyone else,
If you stop and think about it and you say, if you could issue something
like the US dollar.
and it could only come from you, would you ever feel the need to go get it and borrow it from anyone else?
Okay, now we've established that the federal government makes US dollars so it can never run out of them. And that's how it can always pay its debts,
pop culture
and that's
shit.
why it never has to borrow from anyone else. So if the government doesn't need to borrow, why is there a national debt? It's a good question. But to answer that, we first have to understand what a deficit means.
Imagine that the government spends $100 into the economy, but it only taxes $90 back out. We label that a government deficit, but what we have to remember is if they put 100 in and only subtract 90 back out, what they're really doing is depositing $10 into some part of our economy.
So those 10 bucks are actually circulating in the economy. It's a negative in the government's books, but it's a positive for the rest of us.
Every deficit is good for someone. The question is, who gets those dollars? Where do they go? And what is that deficit being used to accomplish in our economy?
Is the money going to people who'll spend it on things they otherwise can't afford, stimulating the economy more? Or is it going to people right at the top, who will likely just save it? Seeing our own money in the negative is scary, so it's understandable to have a similar reaction when we look at the government's finances. And that's probably the idea that Mitt Romney was channeling when he said,
I think it's frankly not moral for my generation to keep spending massively more than we take in, knowing those burdens are going to be passed on to the next generation.
But we know the next generation won't be paying for the spending out of their own pocket because the federal government makes US dollars so it can't go broke, which means it can always pay its debts, which means it doesn't have to borrow from anyone. Plus, deficit spending actually leaves money in the non-government part of the economy. If you're thinking there has to be a catch, that the government can't just keep printing money to fill our bucket, well, you're right. At some point, there will be too many dollars chasing too few goods, making prices go up.
We have so many dollars and we're so eager to go out and try to chase after goods and services, and our economy can't keep up. We don't have the productive capacity, and all of a sudden,
so the
all
question
of
you
that
got, okay,
spending
so this
starts
is very good, important point. So right now, do you think our economy is fully producing at its maximum extent? Or is everybody who wants a job, do they have a job? Is every factory, is every mill, is every mine, is everything in the U.S. fully humming at full capacity? And if the answer is no, that means that we have a lot of slack, productive slack back still in our economy. We have a lot of growth that we could still do before we should be concerned about inflation.
Overheat the economy, and the bucket begins to overflow, and you get an inflation problem.
Inflation is the actual limit to how much the government can spend, not debt. Inflation is what we have to worry about. Now, to counter inflation, the government can try to reduce demand by making it more expensive to borrow money. It can also siphon back some of that excess money by taxing it. But what if we made our bucket bigger to fit
And this
more?
is the thing about people like Joe Manchin. He says he's concerned about the debt, and then we say, okay, that $3.5 trillion is fully paid for by taxing the rich. And then suddenly, we're not talking about how the $3.5 trillion is paid for by taxes. The $3.5 billion is paid for by negotiating drug prices. Suddenly, all the fact that the $3.5 trillion is fully costed. Where's the concern there? Wait a minute. Where's the inflation? What's the concern about the debt? They're charging
more money.
If the government is spending on things like infrastructure,
I'm watching you. I'm definitely not working at full
R&D,
efficacy.
research and development.
I guess I should
These are
finish
the
the
kinds
stream
of
then.
things that increase
To quit the stream then if I'm distracting from the U.S. economy
potential output,
and the debt,
so that you actually end up with a bigger bucket over time.
Just kidding.
So now that we know that a deficit isn't necessarily a bad thing, and the US government can always make money, it's time to answer that earlier question. Why is there a national debt? The truth is, there isn't. As Professor Kelton explains, what we call the national debt is just the total account of all the money the government has spent over the years minus all the money the government has taxed back. Even if the government has spent more than it's collected, it doesn't have to pay anyone back for the difference. But what about when people say things like, the US owes China? Well, investors, including foreign governments, buy bonds issued by the US Treasury. The return on these investments is virtually guaranteed because the US can always create the money to pay. So there's no danger of a foreign army showing up to repossess the White House. understanding that the US government can
By the way, our debt is in our denominator. So, like, we could pay them back with dollars. If anything, they're invested in keeping the dollar's value high because they have a debt-denominated dollars. They're on hock to us. It's good when China borrows our money. If we borrowed in yuan, that would be bad. If we borrowed money in a foreign-denominated currency, that would be bad. It's good when people borrow dollars from us that we issue at will. That's good for us when they lend us money in our own currency, rather. When we borrow from them in our own currency, that's them giving us resources. That's good for us. It's actually the opposite. It's bad if you were to borrow in their currency. That makes you vulnerable to them.
Never run out of money and can continue deficit spending as long as inflation is kept under control means big policy ideas
Thank
like
you, Luna, for
universal health care, a Green New Deal, or student debt forgiveness might pay for themselves by keeping more money in the hands of consumers, employing more workers, and expanding the country's infrastructure. That's what happened after World War II when huge government investment led to the expansion of the middle class. But for decades now, people have been told a different story.
If the state wishes to spend more, it can do so only by borrowing your savings or by taxing you more. And it's no good thinking that someone else will pay. That someone else is you. There is no such thing as public money. There is only taxpayers' money.
Now, like the US,
so that's just a lie.
Britain also issues its own sovereign currency. So Margaret Thatcher had it wrong. When the government wants to spend, that money is made instantly. It doesn't wait for taxes. We saw that recently when the US Congress wrote trillions of dollars into existence by passing major COVID relief bills without raising taxes. So the obvious question now is, why do we pay taxes at all? Well,
for inflation.
We pay local taxes because local governments do need revenue. They can't make money like the federal government can. And we've already seen that the federal government can use taxes as a tool to control inflation. Taxes can also be used as incentives. For example, if the government wants people to stop buying gas-powered vehicles, it could offer tax breaks on electric cars. Taxes can alter wealth distribution, spreading wealth among the population, or as the 2017 Trump tax cuts did, further concentrate wealth among the tiny slice of the population. And finally, the government makes sure we continue to need the dollar as currency by requiring that we pay it in that currency. You and your friends could agree to start paying each other in Bitcoin or euros or even chocolate bars, but you'll still need the dollar to pay the US government. A deficit doesn't mean the country is broke. Your kids won't have to pay back the national debt.
No one will.
Understanding this fundamentally changes our perception of what's possible. The US has been deficit spending for decades. As long as inflation is kept under control, there's no reason it shouldn't keep doing so.
The government has been running deficits virtually my entire lifetime, and I'm older than I look. And that's not...
Oh, damn, Stephanie! Stephanie saying she's hot! Stephanie's like, yeah, I know I'm hot. What a flex. What a flex.
Spending for decades.
Pure Sigma energy. Pure Sigma energy.
There's no
right
reason
there.
it shouldn't keep doing
That's
so.
a Sigma
The
female
government has
right
been
there.
running
That's a Sigma
deficits
female.
virtually my entire lifetime, and I'm older than I look.
She does not.
And that's not to suggest
Button
that
clicker, I'm gonna
all
slap
of those
you
deficits
in a
and
video
everything
game.
that was done to create and sustain those deficits improved life materially for the broader society. But of course, there were times when government deficits became very large and sustained, and material improvements were made.
All right, Chad. That was good. That was good. Good content today. Good content. Why is the interest on the debt a part of the national budget? Because we are paying bonds. We are paying people bonds who have federal treasury notes, so they are getting paid. So that has to come from the government, right? So that's part of the debt. That's part of the budget. We do politics here every morning starting at 10 a.m. 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. You can watch us here on Twitch. We're the morning guy, the morning politics guy. Politics Frogs in every single day, same time, 10 a.m., day in, day out. and we carry you through your morning and early afternoon politics needs. And if you need more, Mike from PA, we have a YouTube channel. We talked about suburbs, the My Pillow guy, Ted Cruz. We talked about DSA. Amazing. Making fun of Tim Pool. Amazing. Look at all of these amazing videos. Get in there, watch them. We have me on Twitter. You got to follow me on Twitter, chat. I'm at 20,614 subs. That means I got like 40 followers on Twitter in the last day. You can do better than that. You can do better than that. Go follow us on Twitter. And of course, join the Discord, where we have an incredible community of left-wing streamers. We have left-wing community. We talk about the stream. We talk about politics. There's gaming content. It's a really awesome, supportive place. Direct action, mutual aid, and you can just let off some steam. And also, you can help produce the show. One of the things I do is I look at the links that are put into the news content suggestions chat room on the Discord. Join the Discord, come hang out, and maybe what you want me to talk about will be part of the next show.